I am so excited to do this episode and this movie. Today we're covering Awakenings, and I think that this is probably, arguably, the most beautiful movie ever made. And I don't think it's possible for anyone to not cry during watching it and during certain scenes and certain dialogue that just hits you, like right here. And there's no way I could ever watch it without tearing every time. I think it's a masterpiece, and I think it falls under one of those movies that you have to see at least once in your lifetime. Um, so it stars Robin Williams, and I think this is his best movie, and it shows you his acting reach, where normally, he plays a very eccentric comedic character, but this one he plays a complete serious character who's very awkward socially, was very sheltered. You could tell he's just a teacher who worked with science experiments and never had human reaction with people or anything. He's extremely shy around girls, that kind of thing. And he's so caring for people and everything beyond, you know. And it's just so beautiful. Like if you're a fan of Robin Williams, you have to see this movie. Basically, um, if you love Patch Adams, you have to see this movie. I just think in general you have to see this movie because of just the heart in it, and I could just go on and on about how just beautiful it is. Um, so stars Robin Williams, and what I like is that it's co-starring Robert De Niro. And what I love about that is that Robert De Niro later on, he kind of got well, besides being Godfather, but he didn't get typecasted then. But later on, he got so typecasted as like mafia stuff, even making a joke of it with Meet the Fockers and stuff like that, and Meet the Parents, like those type of roles. But when you go back into the 80s and early 90s, he wasn't stereotypically typecasted to one thing anymore, like Casino and all that. He was just an actor, just like Bruce Willis was. If you're like, he got typecasted as just an action guy with like Die Hard, but he was in a movie called what's that movie called? My God, my mind went blank. Oh, Death Becomes Her. If you've never seen that movie, that's another one that I recommend and that I'll probably end up covering. Death Becomes Her. It has Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn in it, and that is outside of Bruce Willis's typical like roles. Robert De Niro also starred in a really beautiful movie um, around this same time as this movie, Awakenings, and that was Stanley and Iris with Daryl Hannah, who was very big in the 80s and early 90s with the Tom Hanks movie Splash, stuff like that. If you're familiar with her, and sh- and so and my favorite movie with her is Crazy People with Dudley Moore, but that's for a whole other day. I'm getting so distracted. But the point is that I was bringing up that I like the time when actors weren't typecasted or just doing the same thing all the time. Like even Will Ferrell kept doing that. You know what I mean? Like where he kept doing like a similar character over and over again. That's why I respect the actors who even if they don't make the big box office theaters and movies and everything, they do just for the love of acting and for the heart and the love of different characters and to touch people with beautiful scripts. Like Robin Williams in his later life did so many movies that you didn't really hear that were in theaters or anything, but they would be like really beautiful, like a movie. But this movie actually was huge and in a box office hit and all that. But you get my point. Sorry, I'm rambling, but I'm excited about this. So it stars Robin Williams. He's Dr. Malcolm Sayer, and Robert De Niro is Leonard Lowe. It also stars, and she's just fantastic in it. If you're familiar with her from The Simpsons, obviously, she's the voice of Marge Simpson, Julia Kavner, But she was also really famous in the 70s of what made her because of her distinct voice. She was really famous for being on Mary Tyler Moore as her best friend, and then she got her own spin-off show. That's how popular she got. Oh my god, why can't I remember the name of that show right now? It's like there's so much up here. um oh my god, what was the name of her show? And then on her show, the guy that would play Garfield's voice in the animated cartoons and stuff was the guy at the apartment that she lived at, and he got famous for his voice on that, where you didn't see what he looked like, and then he later on became Garfield. I can't remember the name, but I'll say it later. But anyway, let's stick to Awakenings. So yeah, it has a fantastic cast. It's beautiful. It's based on a true story, which is really makes it even sadder because this is true and this could happen to people, and that's what makes it really sad. And that's so it starts out where you see Robert De Niro's character Leonard as an 11-year-old boy, and he's living a regular boy's life, but it's in the 1920s, 30s, and he's getting Parkinson's. And apparently in the 1920s there was this breakout of what do you call it? Of epileptus, I believe it's pronounced, and it's like a Parkinson's, where Parkinson's where your hand shakes or parts of you shake and you can't control it. And so the character, I like that at the beginning he's hanging out with his friends. He's a regular 11-year-old boy going to school and everything, and you see that he has straight A's and everything, or pretty much straight A's, or these fantastic grades, and he's such a great kid. He loves to read. There's a scene with a bench where he carves in his name Leonard into the bench with his friends, and then later on they go back to that bench when he's an adult later on in the movie, and it's still, the carving is still there, and I really thought that was cool that they did that. So he starts to develop Parkinson's, and he can't go to school no more because he can't do the work, and he just has his mother, and his mother would take care of him until he was 20, when he got put away finally in a basically just a hospital where they don't look to even, what makes it sad is that they don't even look to cure you, because they care more about it being too expensive to maintain it with the drugs to even maintain you, and they also didn't know anything about it. When this outbreak happened in the 1920s, there was this other doctor that knew about it and was working on finding a cure, but it just got forgotten through time, to where the movie's actually set in 1969, and the flashback is in the 30s, showing Leonard as a boy. And so later on in the movie, I'll just say this and then I'll go in order. I apologize about being all over the place. It's just that it's so, I don't know, there's just so much to talk about and so many memorable quotes. Dr. Sayer, who's Robin Williams, he has to get permission, a signed permission contract by one of the patients' family members that look after them, to get permission to try out the drug. It's called L-Dopa, which he believes could be the cure. And I'll explain everything more of the plot, but I just want to say that there's this one touching part ahead of time, then I'll go back to the beginning. I apologize. It's just like all over the place. Leonard gets Parkinson's when he's 11 and starts shaking and has to leave school. But later on in the movie, when Robin Williams is talking to his mother to get permission to try out the L-Dopa on him, he's visiting her, and she's kind of telling him what happened and everything. He wants to know what happened, and she said that one day, and the reason why I'm saying this is because it makes me cry every time, and it's just one of the most beautiful scenes in a movie I've ever seen. she's saying to him that he was on the bed and his hands are shit, and he reaches out and he says, Mom, what's happening to me, or whatever. Ma, and then he freezes, and she says he never spoke again. And he just froze. Like you it's a disease where you're literally canatonically frozen and you can't move. And so it's really sad. It's horrible, and it's sad, and it's scary, because it's not Alzheimer's, but it's literally like where you become like a frozen statue, but you're alive. And it started out, so anyway, in the 1920s there was this outbreak, and there was this other doctor trying to figure out, and he got shut down because I guess because of funds or being too expensive, and all of a sudden, so okay. So after the flashback of showing Leonard as an 11-year-old boy as he gets the disease, it goes to current time in in the Bronx in New York, where Robin Williams' character is he needs a job, and he's a doctor who is just kind of like antisocial, very sheltered. He just worked with plants and finding like cures for things. He doesn't really, he's very shy around people and doesn't really want a job involving people. But he needs a job, so he's desperate, and so he applies at this place, and they say to him like, well, and it's this hospital where, like, it's sad. They even like they don't look to cure the patients. They don't care. They don't really know what's causing it. They think that they're frozen and that they're not there. Like, they're not really like consciously aware or alive. And that they don't feel nothing or nothing, and they just kind of like and even also starring in the movie by being this like kind of cold-hearted well, I'll say a douchebag doctor is the dad in Home Alone, John Hurd, I believe his name is, and he's best known for being in the Home Alone movies. He's a douche, and so he's in the job interview with him and this other doctor, and he's like, well, I don't know if I should do it because you're looking for like a real doctor who deals with people. And then the one other doctor's like, yeah, but Dr. Sayer, you had to have gone to college to be a regular doctor too at some point, like whatever, you've done heart checkups or the basics. And he's like, yeah. So even though he never worked with human patients before, he gets the job because they're desperate and they need somebody and nobody wants to do it. And that's just makes it so sad, is that these people are here and they're just like abandoned by their families who don't want to deal with it or can't deal with it. And they're just all canatonically frozen or just out of it. Not out of it, but they're either frozen or they're just like, they can only just kind of walk, but they can't talk or anything. Like, they can't talk, they can't blink, you can't talk to them. So it's kind of like, so Robin Williams' first day when he's going to meet all the patients or see them all, he talks to the one nurse, Anthony, and he's this really cool African-American guy who's really sweet. It's funny that the doctors and all the heads up people don't care. They just look at it as like it's a dead end thing. We have to just feed them but we don't really care. It's sad, and it really shows you how hospitals and everything really are. And they're just abandoned. Sorry. It really hits me hard. So Anthony, Robin Williams says, so, like, what are we going to do and everything? And he says, nothing. He's like, they call this place the garden because all we do is just feed and water them. And that saying there just tells you how sad and everything. It's just like, yeah. And everyone has accepted it there, and it's a miserable atmosphere. It's very down. It's hopeless. It's kind of like just, and Robin Williams is the one who sparks like, hey, I really want to figure this out. And he starts doing research. He goes to visit and meet that original doctor who was working with them in the 20s and 30s and stuff like that. Um, he starts to put pieces together that all of them have one thing in common, is that they all had Parkinson's in the 1920s, and they all had that episode, that, the at the beginning, and that's all happened to them. So he's trying to, and John Hurd, the main doctor, above them, the main, whatever you call it, he doesn't want to put money in. He doesn't want. He's just convinced that they're not there. They're just lost their mind, or they're not alive. They're not alive anymore. They're just like what do you call it? Like a vegetable. But Robin Williams believes that they really are alive in there. And no one, the only one who believes him at first is Eleanor, who plays the one nurse at his side, who's played by Julie Kavner from The Simpsons and everything. And and I love the part where she goes up to him in the car when he's discouraged and upset about everything, going home, and she just like knocks on his car window, and she's like, "Doctor, I think your explanation was better. I believe you." And that was just so beautiful. And so he does these tests where the one patient, Lucy, who's this older woman, she's probably like, I think now like 50 or 60 or whatever. He does this test to see with them, and then John Hurd, the main doctor above him, still says like, that doesn't prove that they're alive or anything. He throws a tennis ball at Lucy, who's just frozen, and she's in a wheelchair, but she has reflexes. And when he throws the tennis ball, she catches it like this. And he says like, well, that's a reflex, and someone couldn't do that if they weren't living. And then the doctor above him, John Hurd, says, that doesn't prove that they're actually alive. It could just be like a dead reflex, like a zombie, like a thing that like your body could just do even though you're a vegetable or you're gone. And so he's not convinced. And he gets them, he lines them up, every patient in a circle, and he gets them all to play catch or back and forth with a ball. And also, so that's when he looks to find out what drug that doctor was using, or what drug would work, he thought that what drug would work to see if he could get them out of this state or to cure them, and that's L-Dopa. And so at first it's a struggle where it's not enough, and there's a lot of pressure on him. I'm not giving that much, too many milligrams. It's frowned upon. It's, they're saying like, oh, well, maybe it's too much, and he's like, I don't think it's enough. And so they keep upping it, the amounts, the milligrams. And also with Robert De Niro's character, Leonard, he's there, and his mom visits him and brushes his hair and everything. And this is before he needs her to sign that I talked about earlier. And so the way so what's shocking is that, so after Robin Williams' character at night, it's at night in the room, and he's I think I'm going too far ahead, but there's a scene where he's guiding Leonard's hands with a Ouija board, like, and Leonard starts to like try to speak to him with the Ouija board, writing literally a message to him, showing that he's sentient and he's self-aware and he's not just a vegetable. And not only did the doctor above him, John Hurd, not believe him, but the doctor who was doing the studies back in the 20s that he went to visit, he said like, oh, they're not really, alive or anything in there. And he's like, well, why do you just assume that? And he's like, because anything else would be unthinkable, meaning that it'd be so horrible. But it's like, just because it's so horrible doesn't mean that we have to ignore it just because we don't want to accept it. So they just are leaving them to just rot. It's terrible. It's terrible. And also with Lucy kind of just walks, but she's like in this dead trance. Like she doesn't talk, blink. So the floor in the room, in like the cafeteria room, or where they all, it's like a rec room with a TV where they all hang out in for checkers and stuff. The floor is has a checkered pattern floor, but there's a part where it cuts off and there's no more blocks. She could only walk to that part, almost like her brain sees that there's no more pattern, that I'll just be falling into a black hole, or something, that my brain, like, she needs the pattern to walk. So there's the one beautiful scene where Eleanor and Dr. Sayer, they fill in the rest of the floor with a marker and everything, making the rest of the squares. And the next day, Lucy walks all the way to the window where she couldn't walk before when those squares weren't put there. She's just walking like in a trance, but just walks. It's so amazing to watch the development and to watch all that as they go from not moving at all to just these little signs of life. And then, so that night when Leonard writes Dr. Sayers that note with the Ouija board, he's so Dr. Sayer is sitting with him just at his bedside as he falls asleep. He wakes up in the middle of the night to find out that Leonard's out of his bed and gone. And it's like, oh my God, Leonard's gone. He's awake. He moves. So then Robin, or Dr. Sayer, Robin Williams' character, he runs to the rec room to find Leonard just sitting there, a lot like back from being frozen. Like he's awake. He's alive. And he just says he's sitting there, and you got to remember, he lost like 30 years of his life, because it was like he was 11 and now he's like 50 or whatever it was. Like all these people lost like 30 years of their life frozen. And they weren't frozen where they were awake, seeing everything but can't talk or move. That would be horrifyingly horrible. I'm glad it wasn't that. They were just dreaming. Like, at least they were dreaming and sleeping. At least it wasn't horrifying where they're stuck like this. Because they're like this. So imagine being awake like that. That'd be horrifying. Where you're just like this. So they're actually dreaming the whole time, and it's almost like they're waking up from a dream, and they don't realize that they're older at first. And it comes to a big shock to them where they're at first, they're just like Leonard. Leonard, the first thing he says is like, "It's so quiet." And Dr. Sayer's like, he's so happy to see him. He's awake. He's like, well, Leonard, it's because everyone's sleeping. And then the next day, Leonard's awake, proving to all the naysayers and John Hurd, the asshole above him who didn't want him to do anything. Bruce is like, there you go, it works. So then they give it to all the patients, and then everybody has their life back, and everybody's so happy at first, but then they start to get a little depressed because they look in the mirror and it's like now their hair is gray and they're old. And there's an interesting scene where Lucy says, like, when she finds out it's not 1927 anymore, when that was the last time she was awake, and now it's 1969, and she says, I know it's not 1927, I just need it to be. I don't have any experience as somebody older. I was only like 22. That kind of thing. And it's just, wow. It hits you, like, and how they're just like looking at themselves, and it's like they're seeing the gray hair and everything. And one patient says, oh, he's not happy. He's like, I'm gypped. And so it starts out where first they're all really happy. And I also like the scenes before they all come to wake, when Robin Williams is still experimenting. We're still trying to figure everything out. I like the scene where he plays music, and it's like classical music, and it's like swing music, but he tries opera, because he's kind of like a nerd, where he's not really like hip with the current things. He's like a nerd where he only likes like classical music and opera. He's like very a very hermit type of guy. You know what I mean? And Anthony, who's the cool male nurse, he starts playing Jimi Hendrix for the one guy, and then he starts eating and moving, like still in a trance, but but instead of being completely frozen, like starts to just eat like this to move. So they find out that they could move to music, they could move to touch. Certain things just moved them, but when they got the L-Dopa, it brought them completely back. So imagine being a frozen statue, and then you're back. It's the most beautiful thing ever. And so it's very beautiful at first, and there's a beautiful bond between Leonard and Dr. Sayre, where he helps Sayre become a little bit more outgoing and everything, and to have a life, because he tells him about how Eleanor, the nurse, likes him, and says that, and he's like, what did she say about me? How do you know? And he says that she said that you're a kind man. And I know that sounds so simple, but like when you watch it and you see the delivery and you watch this movie, you'll cry. With the most, like the most simplest quotes are the most beautiful thing ever. Just the way he says it, that he's a kind man, that he cared about all these people and brought life to this place and brought, you know what I mean? And Leonard starts to date this one girl that visits because she's visiting her father with the same disease. But he starts to get frustrated because his mom keeps treating him like an 11-year-old, and she's like, "Oh, why this isn't the Leonard I know? He's interested in girls now and all this stuff." It's because last time he was awake, he was 11 years old, and now he's a man having all these new feelings and experiences. And he likes her. Her name's Paula. And what's happening though is that he starts to get enraged and frustrated that he can't leave the place, only on field trips, and he's getting bitter. And it's really sad because you see him, like, you see it, the medication's not working anymore. And he's starting to get his Tourette's and his Parkinson's back, where he's like this, like this while trying to talk. And he's just there in a scene having lunch with Paula, and they're eating, and Paula's just like talking about her day, saying like, "Oh, I just did this, I didn't do much." And he's just like, they're never gonna let me out of here, you know what I mean? And then there's also a scene where he's trying to brush his teeth, and he can't keep it still, like this, and it just makes you cry. And also, so Robin Williams' character is documenting this whole time, like with pictures, with a video camera, and he's recording Leonard while he's struggling, like to do anything like this, and he's and Dr. Sayre saying like, "I can't do this. There's no dignity in it. I can't record you like this." And he's like, "No." He's like, "No. People have to learn from this, or learn from me. Keep filming." And it's like he did all this to show, you know what I mean? Even with him regressing back to being frozen again. Another beautiful quote is that Lucy's always talking about how she visits her dad and everything, and he can't talk to her, he can't speak. You know how Leonard was, and all them, and Leonard just says to her, like, because he knows that he doesn't have much more time, he could kind of feel it. There's also where they actually kind of like, he actually causes a riot too, as like a leader, you know what I mean, against John Hurd, the main doctor, saying like they fear us and everything because we've survived this, and they can't even comprehend it. And he riles everybody up, and it kind of, because of how frustrated everybody becomes, that they can't live a regular life. But there's a beautiful scene that he says to Paula, because when she's visiting her dad and saying like, "I don't know if I'm wasting my time, or I don't know if he could even hear me," and he says, "Your father can hear you, and he knows you visit him." You know, and it's just because he knew all that time his mom was visiting him when he was in that frozen state. His mom kind of gets jealous that there's a girl in his life because she's always been the one, and I think that's beautiful. And I think there's a beautiful scene when Robin Williams goes to the house going backwards to get her to sign the signature for the medication, and she says, "Well, what is this good for? What would he even have now?" And Robin Williams says, "He has you," and that's what gets her to sign. It's just so beautiful. There's so many neat scenes, like when Leonard goes out with Dr. Sayre, because they become friends. They hang out, and he sees how different the world is now because he's looking around in New York City in 1969, and he sees all the different changes like weren't didn't exist in the 20s and stuff like that. You know what I mean? He sees like men. He sees like hippies, and you know what I mean. And he sees like um TV, all this stuff that was not around back then. And he's just like, it's just so cool to see, like, and sad to see all the changes as well. It's beautiful that they all get a second chance, but then there's the regression, and then there, you know what I mean, and what happens next. And I don't want to spoil everything, and I don't want to say everything because I really want you guys have to watch and check out this movie. It's so beautiful. I think it's one of the best ever. Um, and so yeah, I guess that's all I really want to cover. Because if not, I'll be giving away everything. And so go check out this movie. It's Awakenings.